Hey everyone, welcome to Hot Dice. So this is the moment you've been waiting for, the Grimdark Sisters painting tutorial. It's quite a long one. I think it's coming in at about 30 minutes, but that's because it is complete from start to finish, and that's all the techniques and all the little tricks I use to get the weathering, the deep contrasts, and so on and so forth. So what we'll do is we'll just jump straight into it, and we'll start with some of the images you can see. So here we are. This is the start. Grey undercoat, maybe a little bit of white spray. Nice, easy to see the detail. Going on with some watered down leadbelcher, straight onto all the metallics. It's important to have it watered down, not so much that it's running off the model, but it's more to do with the finish. So there's going to be a lot of layers, and any detail we're losing at this paint stage is going to be, it's going to just be exaggerated when we start getting to the weathering and the typhus corrosion, the highlights on top of those. And yeah, it's really just try and be conscious at this stage. Get it right now and you don't have to worry about it later. So trying to do a nice clean job here. I'm just covering everything. The leadbelcher goes on well enough even when watered down, but it's still reasonably wet. So I won't try and do two coats at the same time. So while that's drying, I've gone onto the cloth. So I'm using like a grey cream colour here on all the cloth. You can use any, of course. You'll notice I'm not doing any blending. This is just straight colours that are watered down. That's the beauty of this technique. It's reasonably quick. If you get it nice and clean at the beginning, you don't have to do much touching up at the end, and you still get the good results. You still get the good contrast. Just trying to get as much coverage as possible. Where I think it's drying, I want to make sure it's nice and smooth. Again, for the same reason as the metallics, don't want to lose any. Okay, well that's drying, and the silver's still drying. I'm going to go into with some purples. Again, you can use any colours you want. No blending, no funny painting tricks going on here. They're just straight colours, just watered down, straight on. Of course, the problem with having the paint so wet is if they touch each other, they will run into each other a little bit. That will get in the way. So I'm happy with the cloth colour. So these are Vallejo colours I'm using on the cloth. I tend to get, I feel the earthy colours are quite nice. The pigments go on really well. So I'm going back over those now while the purple's drying. I think the metallic's probably still a little bit wet at this stage, but I'll go over that again if I need to. Again, because the silver base kind of looks quite bright and brilliant. That's one of the great things about painting over grey. Okay, now I'm going in with a more burnt umbery colour from Vallejo, getting all the woods, getting this strange, what would you call it, shrine standard, really watery because I'm going into these perforated things here, what are they, with the holes, some sort of screens. Just getting everything in here, just to give it a brown, almost like a brown wash. Just getting into all the details. That'll make it contrast heavily with the rest of the mini. And then slightly thicker the paint then onto the bolter. Again, nothing fancy, no fancy blending techniques. Straight on. Very basic. This is like a painting 101, takes me back to the first year of painting. It's quite bizarre feeling, to be honest. But refreshing. And strangely satisfying. Careful not to get any of the bits you've already done. And onto the gold. So I'm using a brass actually, Vallejo brass. I love this colour, it goes on really well. I'm almost dry brushing it on, especially onto the statue in the standard, because I want to get a really aged look. Red, and we're getting to the stage now where we can start getting it all muddied up. So I'm using the black Blacktemplar contrast, watered down. Like I said about the null oil is just useless now. They've changed the formula this year. I'm certain of it. It gets zero coverage, and it pools. So God knows what they've done. Luckily, this Templar is a good replacement. I'm only getting it on the metallics. Really careful here, guys. And I'm being pretty generous with it. This is where I'm getting my deep contrast here, so plenty on. Don't have to worry too much about losing the details of the model because our silver went on nice and thin. And already it's looking pretty presentable. You could play with that. If it had a head. And where I want really deep shadows here, I'm also doing it there. So I'm using it on the screens in the back. I'm going into the corners back there. But again, a lot of these corners are going to be covered with pigments and weathering powders, so they're going to be covered up. So don't worry about it looking a bit odd. Just make sure I can make those pop a little bit, those scrolls. There you go. I'll just play with those a bit later. Now, really careful. Onto the strange symbol around her belt, the Inquisition symbol. And that's all done. Now, here we go with the enamel washes. I'm going to use this on everything that is even remotely non-metallic. So this is to tie the whole model together. It's going on nice and thick, straight out of the bottle, into all the golds, all the woods, all of the streamers and the banners and the scrolls. Don't be shy. I mean, it might look a bit of a mess when it's going on, but this comes off. This comes off later. And you'll see you'll be able to add it and take it off as many times as you like. You see, I don't know what I'm trying to do there. I'm trying to do like an uneven surface on the wood maybe, just to give it a slightly different texture. So this is going in straight away, slightly watered down, trying to get smooth layers here. Don't want too much pooling. I didn't put it on the purple. I could have done. Maybe that would have tied the purple and the cream together a little bit. Not too fussed though. You can see from the end result it doesn't look that bad. The purple is there for contrast at the end of the day, and they can be tied together with any so before I move on, so here's me taking off the excess enamel with what I've got there is white spirits on a cotton bud, and that's been brushed on a piece of paper towel to take the excess off. And I'm just going around and trying to take off the raised areas. Just the majority of it. Now I feel like I've taken too much off there. It wasn't deep or dark enough. But it comes off so easy and it goes back on just as easy as well. So now I'm going in with a paintbrush with the white spirits. So if you put a lot of white spirits on your brush, you can actually put it onto the surface and then just almost blend out the enamel, so you can go from a deep to a much more faded look. It's almost like reverse washing. And then if you're not happy with it, bang more enamel on. It's not getting thicker, you're taking it off with the white spirit. That's the beauty of this. Another technique I found with this is if your cotton bud's getting dirty, you can, it's getting old and battered, that's great. You can actually use that to dapple it on or take off the enamel as well. So now we're moving on to the typhus corrosion, technical paints from Games Workshop. So these are going to go in all of the armour bits, the recesses, or those that aren't completely central to where the light is going to be hitting the model. So all along the flanks of the torso, sides of the thighs, the bottom side of the packs, and this is just going to add grainy texture. So this is going to help you control the way the light bounces off the mini. So when people look at it, the light's all getting reflected off the smoother surfaces, so the tops of the boob armour, and so on and so forth. So here I felt like I took too much off. Again, like I said with the enamel, so I'm going back in, especially on the buttons, in the dark recesses, the folds, just pop it back in. Nothing lost. And I'm also then applying it to the armour. So once the typhus is dry, I'm putting it all over the armour and the recesses again, almost blending between the light armour and the recesses. And that's going to tie all those colours together. And then with the white spirits, lifting it off again where I put too much on. I found on the internet elsewhere people are suggesting the cotton buds and what have you for taking this off, but I found the paintbrush has a lot more control of the white spirits. Now what I'm doing once that's all dry, and the enamel does take hardly any time to dry, it dries really quick, going back in with that base cream colour. Because I've done most of the blending up and out from a base colour anyway, it's not too stark, and on the back it looks like it is actually quite muddy, and it is. There's going to be too much of a hard line there, but I'm not worried about that, because what I can do with withering pigments is get in there and blend over the top as well. And because I'm using the same AKinteractive enamel washes and the streaking grime, you'll see that they all come off with white spirit, so I can get the same blending effect. Make sure I get the raised areas. So I should have said this earlier about it's the AKinteractive enamel washes I'm using. I'm not sponsored by them, obviously, but that's what I'm used to using. I'm sure other enamel washes are available and work just as well. They probably go onto the acrylic paint just as well and come off with white spirits, but I just haven't used them, so I can't really speak of them. So this is the bit where I'm a little bit more careful. I'm, taking my time here. You can see the armour looks pretty muddy at this stage. Don't worry about that. We're going to go back in like we are now with the base cream colour. We're going to go back in with the base metallics on the raised areas. So now with the cream, once I feel like I've got a nice layer up to the bottom of the crevices, I can start adding a little bit of white, or I'm using ivory because I try not to use white at all as a highlight, especially the Grimdark. I don't want there to be any of that going on, so even the white is a bit muddy, so the ivory is a nice creamier white. And I'm just taking the highlights again along the tips, on the raised areas. Quite subtle smooth blends. I'm not actually white blending at all, wet blending at all. I don't have a wet palette, as you can see. I just have a lid, which just is a nightmare. My next investment will be a wet palette. I'm sure they're not as easy to use as most people make them look. You'll see I've got my my fair lady here on the end of a stick. I highly recommend this. So inside here, I wanted to make this look like a real skull. I'm sure maybe it is, but if you look at old medieval Catholic, what would you call them, saints or shrines, they're quite morbid. Using my hand as a drying station, taking off the excess paint there. Which is why my hands are always covered in paint in my videos. Yeah, so I wanted it's very morbid. There's usually real people were transported around Europe in these strange caskets for everyone to gawk at, with all gold and all sorts of things. And that's what I'm going for, that really deepest, darkest, early Catholic look. Which is, let's be honest, that's what these guys and girls, should I say, are all kind of modelled on. It's almost the attraction of it. It's the real Grimdark. It's almost a reflection of that medieval dark part of our history where there's not much written. Okay, so now actually I'm going to do a little bit of wet blending. I've started by putting the base colour down wet, back on top where I've actually gone over, and now here with the ivory added slightly, very watered down on top of the already wet purple. I'm putting it up and it's quite harsh there, you can see. What I'm going to do then is clean the brush. Make sure I get all the areas I want to get it on. Clean the brush with the wet on it, and then just blur the lines between the two. There we go. And that just removes the harsh. Trying to do it again here. Try and get this on focus view. Oh, I did a terrible job. I'm just brushing in the water up to that. Sorry about that blur. And yeah, it works. You can see. I keep my secrets. But yeah, you see the process. And relatively effective. I don't have to spend ages doing it. Happy. trying to add a bit more recess colour. Oh no, I've missed. This is something I'm really trying to do. So I used to, until very recently, miss a lot of details on menus, and it just gives them a really unprofessional, unfinished look. I thought, well, I've got the purple arms. Had a little bit of interest. Maybe they got a purple rubber grip on their bolt pistols. So now, the fun bit. Going in the leadbelcher, nothing else, nothing fancy, and not much paint on the brush, and I'm going onto all the raised areas. And you see I'm not really painting on, I'm almost stippling it on. The typhus corrosion underneath has created like a gritty texture, which helps in this. Too much paint there, I feel like I've put too much on, but I can save it. Just where the light's maybe going to catch the top edge, the ankle. It'll catch a bit there. Definitely on the rim of the gleaves. But I'm not trying to be too realistic with the lights travelling. I want to bring out the detail as well. Okay. So right now, what's going through my head is, bugger, I've put too much on. So I'm going to let that all dry. I've done all the raised areas, the tops of the boob armour, all the shoulder pads and all that sort of stuff. And now I'm going to go in with the weathering. So this is an enamel weather from AK, dirt and dust deposits. It's going to go into all the recesses, straight in, bang, no messing about, plenty of overspill, not on the very tips, not on the corners of the raised areas. And now I'm going in with the white spirits to clean it up. And you'll see it's kind of making it dirty actually. It's blurring the lines as I've said, but just going to take it off, and that's great because I want it to look a bit dirtier. Or I want there to be a transition from dark to light, because that's going to create that look as if I've spent hours blending out the colours when I haven't. There you go. I'm looking at this and thinking it's looking a bit washed out. There's not much contrast here, so probably going to add some Agrax Earthshade washes to some of the details later. That's going to help me out a lot. I'm going to put in the scrolls as well. Now, I was a bit conscious. I wanted the scrolls or ribbons, or however you want to call them, the I don't know. Yeah, the scrolls. I wanted them to be different from the cloth. And the way I think I'm going to achieve that is actually by making them look dirtier. And now I'm going to go in, putting it where the dust might settle inside there, in the corners, on top of the skull, on top of the statue, and where I might have missed it, or I think I've taken away too much before. Right, here goes nothing. So the silver's dried. I'm going to go back in again, getting the very tippiest, toppiest bits, and I'm actually mixing in a lighter silver, just where the light's hitting it. I'm going to try and catch all the raised areas. So what I'm doing is every time I'm adding a lighter silver colour to the armour, the area is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And it can be quite a stark contrast because there's a lot of rough texture under there. It's not going to look like actual circles. And what we'll do is we'll go in with a brown Agrax Earthwash shade later, and it'll completely remove the transition. I say completely. Well, close enough that you didn't notice it in the first photograph, I hope. Shoulder pads. There's a lot of detail on these shoulder pads. They're quite difficult to paint actually. They look great, but I've lost a lot of detail. I've probably put too much of the corrosion on. I think my next miniature I won't put any corrosion on the shoulder pads, or at least very little. And this is a much lighter silver, so I'm trying to only catch the tops. Again, I'm just stippling it. I'm not painting it. I want an uneven. I want to draw the eye to the top where the light's being was hitting the metallic armour. I don't want it to look nice and shiny and new. It's very light in this image, so you don't really get the effect of the contrast, but that'll all come later when washes are applied. Now, pure silver is just a dot. Literally just dots. This is silver from Vallejo, really nice, bright, clean silver. I'd never normally use it on any miniatures because it's just, I find it too much. Just a dot. Just a suggestion. Maybe there's a light source at the top there. Taking my time. This is a critical part, so dots. Maybe that's where I'm going to catch most of the light there. I'm happy with that. Okay. Now I saw these shoulder pads. I've lost quite a lot of detail, so I'm going to have to just go in with the golds, be as careful as I can, and then I think we're going to just have to wash them afterwards. This is just to add a little bit of contrast. I was thinking about white, but I'm trying to avoid it on this model if possible. There's no room for white in the deep dark, grim dark of 40k. Not for my girls. Just introducing it, not too much. You don't want to put too much gold. I mean, she's a standard bearer, so I'm probably going to put a little bit more on her than I normally would. Just because it is a position of, you know, of honour in any military throughout history, and I'm sure in the 40k universe. Because I put the black wash before, I'm just going to highlight the areas. Just not too much. Just on the tips. There's some very subtle folds. Maybe just put some streaks down there. Again, the trick to all this method is the contrast. So here we come in with the brown washes. Straight on the golds, no messing about. Onto the buttons, because I've lost a lot of definition there with the white spirits, unfortunately. It didn't have much control there. There's some buttonholes on there as well that I think I lost the definition on, so I'm going in there. Now, yep, just doing the gold. Buttons down here, I think I was unhappy with how I lost all those. I'm just going to take off the excess. I really just... I don't want to, with washes you can get this, especially with close details like that, they can all get pushed into one long brown streak and it looks unrealistic. You can see I've got a bit more definition there in the buttons. Yeah, just using it to try and emulate some shadows at the bottom. Not all over, just underneath, under the arms, so on and so forth. Try and save that shoulder pad. And now onto the silver. So I'm only putting this on the flanks, on the sides, not on the top where I put the silver, just the sides. And you'll see it completely changes, it almost gives it a blend look. Okay, just getting some black now and putting that on the bolter, because I got a bit of mess everywhere. My big sausage fingers aren't so good at the detail. So. And saying that, here we go. I got my teeniest tiny brush, and using my natural shaky hand ability, I am now attempting to emulate some sort of writing on here. I get a little bit too good at being clean. I have to go back. This is watered down, by the way. and this is Corvus black, sorry. So it's a slightly grey black. That kind of adds to the faded look. If I'd used pure black, it'd look a bit odd, I think. It looked too clean, and it's going onto a really dirty scroll, so yeah, using a slightly greyed black actually helps here. And I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, there you go. I managed to actually keep some of the... it doesn't look terrible for me. So once it's all dried up, the weathering pigments, you can see this is the end result on there. I'm just trying to use them in a way where I'm thinking, okay, so they're going to settle in the corners, the washer's going to go underneath to create shadow, and I've got really decent contrast, and it looks dirty, weathered, used, and there's nothing special to this. I mean, I think anyone could do this, honestly. So I think I've just focused on this for a little bit so you can see that, and then that's the end product again, just so we can kind of get an idea. Now, you can add or take away as much of the weathering as you like. You can see the silvers, the metals have got great contrast. They're really bright up front and on top, really deep and dark, and the transition's quite smooth because I've used brown wash, and that all kind of gives it the same palette. It's all very dirty except for that purple, which just pops, and that's fine. That's fine. I think I was really happy with this. I'm looking forward to doing the rest of them. Okay, so thanks for joining us. I think that was quite quick, really. There's a lot of information in there for you to take in. What I'll put into the details below some of the paints I use, so you can just go and look those up wherever you want. I'm not going to recommend any suppliers, but you know, they're freely available in most places. You know, put loads of comments in for what you want to see before. I'd like to start a conversation around these. I'm really pleased with the results. So thanks for watching Hot Dice, and see you next time. Bye.